Hello, and welcome each and every one of you to another episode of this monthly Soul Vibes. And this time it's a wonderful round number 30. So we've been going for 30 months already with this particular program. And it's one of those kind of more lighthearted, I feel a bit more lighthearted when I sort of prepare for a channel, for a talk, and where we explore, of course, everything to do with soul, with a soul-filled living, all of the different things that get affected by each one of us inviting our soul in, becoming more and more soul-filled and soul-infused. And also, like all of the things that change within our environment. And of course, we look at what is going on in the world in this incredibly chaotic and all changing world. And the world that also at the moment is filled with a lot of fear for all the different reasons. Some is invoked on purpose in order for those powers that be to try to continue to control and to exert their authority over uncalled for authority, I mean, in this case. And also, there is a fear of people actually not being able to handle the changes that we're going through. And so, I want to remind myself and of course each one to sort of remember how, perhaps if you still remember those times before, and it doesn't matter how much you feel that you're infused with your own soul or whether you feel it at all, but you know that there have been times where you felt much, much more disconnected. And and so to remember how wonderful it is to be in these times with soul infused, being able to tap into the depths of your being, into your well being, into your inner nourishment, into your safe inner safe space that you co-create with your own soul, and to also be having these kind of meetings that we have where we get together and remind of each other that we're not alone on this journey. And it is easy to forget and this, and even though we are on different sides of the world, we can feel this connection when we come into this safe space, into this safe area that we co-create together, the round table. And so I also want to, thank, of course, each and every one for continual presence, and for all those that are new, whether you're watching this, live now, or whether you're watching to recording later, you're still very much part of this space that we co-create. And so also I want to say that, all of the things that I discuss and about the challenges and all of this, I do want to put it into this context that I've just mentioned, that dealing with everything that is going on in the world and dealing with all of the different challenges and things that we face when we're integrating or just living a soul-filled, a heart-based life in this world. That is nothing compared to like our challenges, so different than from those people that are feeling disconnected, that are lost in this way, that don't have an anchor to sort of feel this connection, this anchor on the inside. And for them, the level of difficulty, of course, it is much, much harder, because as things are shifting, as all of the different institutions and things that felt solid and trustworthy, that they keep being uncovered, they keep being, shown for what they really are and were. And that, people are invited to look inside. And yet a lot of people, they don't, for whatever various reasons that we discuss in other places. And there are many, many reasons for that. And yet, for them, the challenges are completely much harder than what we're talking about here the challenges of integrating soul and living a soul-filled life. And yet at the same time, this soul-filled life is very, very challenging at times. Like for me, this last week has been incredibly intense. And I can't even say has it been because, recently, a couple of weeks ago could be Michael, as you know, part of my soul has come back in big way. This on the inside, the presence of Michael, and he's incredibly intense, the warrior, or the passion, the fire, that kind of volcanic intensity, and truth and authenticity that he carries. It is again was a little bit of a shock to my system because I have to allow that. I have to kind of allow all of the channels to flow much faster or in a much bigger volume because of this intensity and passion and this authenticity, this energy of authenticity and truth just like it radiates out. And I can feel it touching the world and touching the people, even let's say if I'm driving down the highway and as I sort of pass down suburbs, I feel this it's kind of like these arms going out and just sweeping through, flowing through all of that area through the people. And I wonder sometimes, wow, what is are the people actually feeling this, or is this just perceiving that? I can't answer that. But a lot of the things mm, they keep changing in this way. And so for me, this soul-filled relationship, I can't really say, for a week ahead or a month ahead or a year ahead as to how I'm going to be dancing, why Alexis I'm going to be dancing with this, how I'm going to be feeling, how I'm going to be relating and interacting with this. And this is how it is supposed to be. And this also is a part of this changing of the human part of the human self that has to change in a way to accommodate all of these kind of things, to accommodate this kind of dance of flow of intensities of being able to carry this and embody and still be very human, as a matter of fact, much more human than ever before. So, one of the greatest surprises and things that have happened in the last few years. Mm, And even though I've always been very grounded, this presence has actually made me much, much more grounded in things, much, much more being able to deal with everyday stuff, to be able to just sit through and follow through some things that in the past I found too difficult, not because they were so hard to complete, but just to stay with that. I would, my body would become nervous. There would be this fidgety energy, but now there is just this calm presence that just can sit with whatever it is, with everyday practical things, with running my household, with doing, things that need to be done, with things that I do for fun, with chores, with going for walks, with feeling the wind on my skin, touching me, whispering, like to be carried by all these beautiful scents and sounds and the ocean and the forest and the trees. There is just this enormous outpouring and enormous flow of so many different things, experiences, fulfillments for the senses in all different ways. And, in the past, what I thought was that I needed to go out on my road trips in nature, and I did at the time, is when I kind of learned the trust and the walk step by step with my own soul. And then last few years have been about also bringing all of this into, into this town, into the city, into my home, into much more populated areas, into my work, into jobs, into all of these things. And so that everything is complete and whole. There isn't a part of my life that would be left out. And even though now there is a more like a distance of balance, that it doesn't have to be balance. I don't mean balance as in all has to be equal, but it does require me to make sure that I incorporate on a continual basis so many different things that fill me, that make my heart glad, that make my heart quicken, that are good for my body, that are good for my emotions, my whole well being. And that includes, as I said, maintaining my home. That includes going out to nature for walks, spending time on my own. That includes having friendships. That includes partnerships and work and all the different things. There isn't one thing that is left out and one thing that is in. And this is like all of it really is a dance. It is a dance of all of these things. It's not like a prescribed, a one-time thing. It's just this continual flowing with the changes of the season, with my own changes, my I as a person, as a human being, I am becoming, older. And I don't mean this in a negative way that is seen as something negative, but I mean as in a practical, realistic way. There is each one of us, those that are in more advanced years, whatever that means. If you're 15, then 25 is very old, kind of thing. But it's okay to be mature. It's okay to be, it's okay to accept all the things that come with that, the wisdom, the realizations that certain things I won't experience anymore in this life. And it does have, things that are for a 20-year-old, let's say, or a teenager or something like that. And all of these things, um, I'm leading all of this to the acceptance of things as they are, and some things as they are, and also to learn to accept things that touch the heart in a huge way, and yet have changed or are changing in a way that to you as a person may not be acceptable. What I mean is that, in the world, there's so many things are going on, whether it is with humanity, with the weather, with political systems, with all sorts of things, whether it's on a macro or micro level, whether there are things happening in your neighborhood, on your street, what's going on in society, let's say with schools and all of the things. There are so many things that are going on that I find for my heart extremely unacceptable. And this week, part of the theme is that how do I live with something that to my heart is unacceptable, and yet it is happening, and yet other people are driving it forward. and pushing it forward and creating it without, let's say, asking me whether they should or not, whether it's okay or not. And so I feel that each one of us has these kind of spaces within your life, and these things can invoke full on emotions, anger, all sorts of emotions and feelings. It can also invoke, and very often does, the feeling of powerlessness, because especially, let's say, if you were campaigning, for some people campaign and do all of these things, and then their work is gone nowhere, or perhaps, the other side won and things like that. These are such huge, some of these things are huge things to integrate and to be able to process in this way, because, you know, even a few years ago, when we were much more naive, or well, I was much more naive, and when we were talking about this mastery and enlightenment and stuff like that, and how, there was this idea that everything is going to go your way, but this energy serving me and things serving me, there's part of that, but there is also a part that has to very much to do with other people and what they're going through and what they're co-creating. And so, there is a need, for me at least, it was a need to find a way to overcome, to integrate these feelings of feeling powerless in the face of, let's say, something happening that was very touching my heart, and yet it happened in the opposite way as to what I wanted, for example, and continues to do so, the huge changes that are going on in the world. Um, and so I kind of stepped back and sat with this, and meditated, and was staying with all of these feelings and emotions. And there was some really intense stuff coming up, to my surprise. And whenever there's this kind of big integration and a big change, there's a number of different things that happen. And one of them is to allow the perception at the end of it, when it's all flown, the perception and the identity of who I am to change, because I've now integrated something that wasn't before. Or and whether that is from my own self, Alexis, in this life or other lifetimes, or from humanity, a collective. Once it is in my body, once the cells are holding this energy, it is mine, in a sense that I have to process it, I have to work with it, I have to do something with it. And there was this huge, almost a test, also how how um, mm, how strong or how deep my ability to accept things that are not according to my heart, but are present in the world, are, and still trust my soul. Because in those times when these things, there's some things that feel too big to be able to hold, to be able to let flow, and the feelings of, let's say, devastation that come with it, the feelings of all sorts of these kind of feelings of powerlessness, these kind of feelings that come with it. And then to be able to then feel that, let it flow through, and then still step into, on the same minute, in the same 5 minutes, in the same day, to be okay with that, and still step into, back into my own space of safe, feeling trust with my soul, feeling okay with myself, feeling that everything is well with my world. And that was kind of so much about this week. And I for myself have done that. I have stepped. I realized again, because this is not been the first time these kind of things happen, because it's almost like periodically is like, okay, what about this? Do you have a heart as big that it can actually flow this and yet still be in this newfound space that you're creating, this space of wellness, this space of nurturance. And we're all, each one of us are familiar with these things because we're familiar perhaps even just with things like self-doubt, or when perhaps we don't feel worthy or not good enough of this kind of, let's say, of this connection of in this wholeness with soul. So this is kind of it's the same as that. It's like, which voice are you gonna follow? Because within all of this, it's not just personal. There's a big collective issues to do with this, because it's kind of like, when more and more things about humans, about organizations and things are uncovered, about being able to see all of the things that are going on in the world as a real question, a test. What they used to say, a test of faith, and some people still say, but when you have this presence that is tangible, it isn't about faith, it's more about trust. But it isn't even about trust, it's more just about being able to shift after that, being able to shift seamlessly back into my own space of well-being, my own space of all is well in all of creation. Straight after when, or and alongside of when I felt those kind of huge, huge things. And so, this ability, these kind of abilities, they continue to surprise me. They continue to strengthen even, but I do feel like when I'm in my own safe space, in my own soul space, I feel 100% strong. And yet this strengthening just keeps expanding to cover more and more. And it's more and more to be okay with what's going on in the world and with other people, but it is also more and more on the inside to cover more as to who I am. Because as the who I am, each one of us, when I say who I am, not me for myself, but you for you, is about, it's much stranger than the human perceives, is much as that the human initially thinks, is much bigger, is much spanning across timelessness. Even if you look at the physics and the scientific ideas to do with something that is timeless, that doesn't have no beginning or no end within the context of human life and physicality and perceptions, this is a very unimaginable state of being that can only be felt. But even this feeling, the feeling expands. Feeling is of anything is not static. So feeling and perceiving myself timeless, it continues to expand if I go with it. If I do what is necessary, all of the all of these things, meaning like, stay with these feelings, stay with whatever comes up, breathe into them, allow them to integrate, Allow them to come home. Allow them to go into the flow. And it's not always on the same day. Like, I'm not complete with this particular episode because I can still feel it in my body, feel it in my etheric body and physical body. And I will continue to, because some of these energies are too much to happen in a day or a week. But for me, it kind of has to do with this commitment. Like, I commit, yes, okay, let's do it. If this is what needs to be done, then let's do it. And so, it's that when it's a very particular way to say yes to your soul. And it's it feels small and instantaneous and very quick, but it is 100% committed. And it's very different than to just be saying yes and not meaning it. And so my wholeness of me knows exactly when I say yes and I mean it. It doesn't have to be loud. It's not a scream. It just, I have to just mean it, and it has to be real. And what that yes includes is courage. All of that, it includes lots of things. It includes courage, it includes commitment to step. When the step appears, I step. And the next step appears, I step. When the choices appear, I choose aligned, what is aligned with this yes. And then I also get the courage. I can access the courage that allows me to follow that, because following my own soul's path, it does require of me many, many things of being able to stand on my own 2 feet, of being able to be just quiet in my own space, of being able to not depend on people's opinions or approvals and all of these kind of things, and to be okay when people perhaps actively dislike me and all of this, because when you're walking in your authenticity and in your own truth, it does trigger people, some people in a big way, and now I can actually recognize when people are triggered, because it's almost like a scenario. It's like a record that plays, they get triggered, and then there's certain things that they do. Because I find that, when people are not awakened, or soul filled, they are not, they're very unique. It's kind of like the programs that people run inside of themselves are very small and very predictable, like a record. You put this song on, and it will play that song. And you have maybe a lot of songs if you look at the world and many people, but there's still a limited number, and they have a very limited play through, like a limited play through. What I mean is just that they're very predictable, and they do this doom, 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 this action, this action, this action, this thought that they experience, and then it comes back and it goes round and round and round. So when you're in it, in that loop, it seems like that's just how things are. But when your soul fills you and it imbues you, it brings with it, of course, all of the insights of all sorts of things. And that also, that you step out of all of those loops, and that too then keeps taking you through these points of separation, which is, especially at first view, they're not easy, because it's kind of like, feels like the world is falling apart. Not in a sense that the world is kind of falling apart, but let's say for me personally, because all of a sudden I had a certain identity, and things were going this way, and all of a sudden that whole thing falls away. Certain people fall away, certain new people come, and it's just a big change. And so there is we continue to unpack and learn. And for those of us that have now walked with our soul filled for quite a few years, I probably, let's say 10, 20 years, I'll look at today, back on today, and I thought, oh, I thought I was very soul filled then. And look at me now, because it just keeps expanding. It's a never ending thing, it's a never ending development and unfoldment. And yet, at this moment, I am as 100% as I'll ever be. I won't be any more 100% in 5 years' time. I will just, if I continue, on being self-filled, I will just be more expanded, but it will still be 100%. Just I was 100%, let's say, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I was 100% in that moment. And so all of these kind of labelings, of course, they change, they become very different as to how you can label yourself and what questions you ask. You know, the old questions are not the right questions. So it's like when you allow the new questions to come out from a much more bigger overview, from a bigger depth of myself, from all of these spaces that are now conscious that I didn't know that, I had them. I was unconscious of all of these things before. And so the questions that I ask of things, of choices that present themselves are quite different, than what I used to ask. And many things like that are no longer appropriate, even though 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10, 20, 30 years ago, they were very, very appropriate. So it is not like I have to look at my life in a way that there was something wrong with it 30 years ago. There was never anything wrong with it. Even these kind of things, they fall off, they fall apart, wrong and right and stuff like that. And so, yes, this week has been and it continues to be quite a big one. Um, like even astrologically as well, things have been changed, like quite a number of changes there. The planets changing the sign and making it very rare connections. I mean, rare in a sense that they happen, like not even once in a lifetime for some lifetimes, like because the universe has a very different time system. Some of the changes are generational, even though we say, okay, they're generational, but they do affect each person, each individual within that space. They do affect you. So even though they are generational, they have an individual effect, and each one of us, it has to deal with those themes and those issues and those questions and those feelings and energies that arise. But taking an overview from this, if you have been mm, working with this, you will find that like the work has paid off again and again and again. It pays off. All of the integrations, all of the things that we've allowed, we've transformed and transmuted, they have worked because it's beyond my imagination as to the kind of like emotions and feelings that I can now not easily, it's not comfortable sometimes hasn't been this week, but they can be transmuted in this incredible self-empowerment that even this, it's like, yeah, no problem. I just put it aside and I shape shift back into my own space where I was before. And so this test is sometimes is it a self-test, but it also has to do, with the world old energies of power, of overpowering, like fighting back. And they throw at you all these different things that in the past they've thrown you off. Like when you can have perhaps like a big bout of self-doubt. Is this really real? Am I just being self-delusional and all of these things? Because the world will constantly come at you, come at each one of us. The more you infuse the soul, the more these energies that are in the world that want to stay the same will keep throwing things at you. Are you for real? Are you for real authentic? And to try and make you go back to sleep, and it will put tighten things where it these energy senses where you're going to give in or give up or lose yourself, perhaps for an hour, perhaps for days, perhaps for months, for some people for years, or for a long time, that you go back to sleep because you just have found yourself unable to go over or through these big thing that has been presented to you. Or perhaps I scroll through some maybe media and I see some horrible, but just an image that can, in the past, this could throw me into depression for a few weeks. And it's not that I've become uncompassionate, actually more, but it's just that now in my own self-empowerment, it is just I don't allow those things anymore to take me out of my own feeling of connection, of feeling of wholeness, a feeling of separation. So it doesn't throw me into separation where I would just go into this space where I forget my soul, I forget my wholeness of me, and I don't feel it. No, I actually, if it's trying to throw me, I just make sure just to stop, take a few breaths or whatever I need to do, listen to some music, play my drum, play an instrument, go for a walk, do a stretch, go dig in the garden, whatever I need to do, speak with a friend, share, whatever I need to do. Sometimes that's all it just needs, just step back into my feeling. Because this feeling of and an experience in beingness, in the gratitude, in the sacredness of life, in the divinity, this is what is the biggest threat to, if we call them the powers of the world, the darkness, the whatever that you want to use that. Because there is like a big push to put down, to dismiss, to disregard, to make you doubt, um, to or anything that would be needed to throw you off your connection, off your feeling of the sacredness of life. And this, if there is a battle, this pretty much is it, really. And we feel it now. I know that each one of us feels it much more intense, much more acute, much more full on. And it's not a battle in the old sense where we, go into like some kind of like those old traditional battle. the battle, so to speak, this new warrior is really just about not battling, not putting down, not trying to destroy that, this connection, but just simply be, be connected. Keep allowing the divinity. This is your battle, so to speak. Perhaps these are not the words that maybe everyone connects with, because in many times in the past we've been told the battle has ended, because it has, the battle with self. We're trying to, go and fight with your own shadow. That definitely has ended, and we've put the sword down in this way, and we allow the integration of that. But there is a needed discernment. The discernment is needed because there is very much also a different kind of battle, as I explained, that battle for the connection with divinity, for the sacredness of life and of all earth and of the people. Because there is a big push to try to, and has been for a while, but it's intensified, to try to uh, destroy this connection, to try to minimize it, to try, to have this control. And if you ask myself, like, why would there be that? Isn't it better for everyone to feel their divinity? But it is just about, some things just become so sick and unwell that they just don't see these energies, whether it's people, whether it's non-physical entities from near earth realms, whatever, they just don't see any other way. Because if they're disconnected, they don't actually have the perspective, the feeling, that incredibly beautiful, um, undescribable presence of soul, of sacredness, of love, of compassion, of forgiveness, of redemption, of all of these in one's life. And that is for all life, for all beings, all living beings, not only the humanity, but all living beings, for life on earth and in everywhere. And so I myself, I'm okay if I don't have the full-on explanation as to this, what is that is driving the 3D, that we call it the 3D, or this control and overpower and the destruction of all that is feeding us, that is keeping us alive and stuff like that. This, I can't explain that even to myself. Like, if I did, I would talk about it. But I realized this week, none of these things really matter. There is so much that really doesn't matter to find any explanation. Maybe someone else has, like, I've listened, I've sort of looked and listened to a few people, how they describe it, but nothing actually makes sense that much anymore. Because the story of how it came to be and whatever. But the thing is, it is here, it is happening, and doesn't matter really in this way, because my focus really, each one of us focus really, is about just ensuring to continue, just to allow the infusion with soul, the light, to infuse all parts of self, to continue to nurture and live and stay within your own inner sanctuary, in your own inner safe space, to continue to nurture this connection with your soul, and whatever comes at us, to just continue to, yep, it comes through and flows. And yep, my connection is still here. It's just as it was before. There's no doubt. There's no, whatever doubts that try to come, whatever fears they try to do, whatever they try to do. Nope. I say nope, 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 nope. I know how it feels to be connected. And I come back to this on and on and on, and I feel it. And so I would like to invite each one now to feel this connection, this beautiful, deep anchor inside of you, that it doesn't matter how strong the waves on the surface are, and how big, and how choppy, and how much wind that comes, sometimes, for just like, like what is happening in the world. It's the same on the outside is are the symbols of the inside. And so as we see and experience all these different weather events of the intensity that have not been seen by humans before, not in the living memory at least, this is kind of reflecting of the energies, the craziness, the intensities, and also the destructiveness of energies. And there are energies, and not all destruction is bad. Like, the things have to be destroyed for something new to arise. Things have to burn for the phoenix to be reborn anew, come out anew, from the ashes. People often say this, our phoenix has come from the ashes, but they forget what it felt like to be burned before it can be reborn. And so, that not everything that we're experiencing in the intensity of energies are of what we've discussed today. It has to do also again with discernment, because if we want new, old has to be crumbled. That's no other way to do it. Like this, if you want a new house, you have to break down the old house. I mean, you can renovate and renovate, but these times are not about renovation of the old systems. It is about new, And so, like, because there has been a push for a long time to push away the natural destructive powers of things, just like in nature. So on the inside also, things do get destructed, they constructed for something new to be born. But there is also then this, what we talked about today is when the old is fighting back and wants to again trick, and it uses all of the good things of the human, the kindness, the love, the wanting to help, all of that, and it distorts them, it corrupts them. And that each one needs to be discerning to be able to see what is what, because these things, they do feel different, and even though, like, when things are destructuring in a natural way, they don't feel pleasant, but they do feel there's some rightness about it, that they feel there's a different feeling from when there is an energy coming towards you that is trying to control, or whether it is via a person but that is trying to manipulate and control. And that can be via a person, in person, whether through media, through TV, through just simple energy. Like, as you know, sometimes you walk into a room or into a place or in a shopping center or whatever, and you can feel this energy, like really strong energies that are trying to construct your inner world in a certain way, because you become very, very perceptive of these things. Not that these things weren't happening before, but for me now, I can actually feel when there's this really strong blueprint of that is trying to impress itself upon my energy that would then make me energetically in a way that whomever that is trying to control, you know, whether it's through ads, through movies, through news, through whatever have you, there is like there's energies of things. This is one of the huge also surprises to me is these energies of things, mm, how uh, energies are dynamic and how they are much more important than what I see physically, because that's where all of those patterns and the structures and the inner walls and the blueprints of control of happen, and if and they're through institutions, they happen through institutions as well, of course, through schools, through how we brought up, through religions, through all of these things. And I'm not saying that all of these are all bad at all. I'm not saying that, but they do structure, and they make you structure your inner world in a certain way. Culturally, it's much more than beliefs. Like we used to talk about, oh, if you believe this and if you believe that, then this happens and all of that. It's actually much more than beliefs. Of course, beliefs have a part of it, but it's how you restructure your inner energy, your inner radiance, um, is how then you create the world. It's deeper level, next level from just beliefs. And so I've become so much more aware and perceptive of these things. And again, these are the things that, like they're new territories that if I was to talk about this with someone that is not awakened, they wouldn't understand, they wouldn't have a clue what I was talking about, and they would think I was crazy. So this is one of those things also that each one of us has to come to terms with, that some people may think of us as crazy because we've gone into the realms, into parts of ourselves, into we've made so many parts that are unconscious in a general person. We made it conscious. And what we found there, and what we keep finding is very different as to what mm, we ever thought, because this is just the unknown. There are many of these things that are similar to, the sages, the wise people of the old, those certain individual that have in the past already spoken about these things. And also, let's say, how those people very close to nature, what we call now indigenous, have in the past and even now perceived things and spoken of things, because they were much more in touch. They were in touch with their soul, with their spirit. They may have had a different language, but they understood the language of spirit, the song of the soul. And so we but even they only came to a certain expansion level. What for all of us now, for each one, regardless of what background you come from, it, it just all depends on how far you go with your soul, pretty much. Not what background you have, what education you have, what color you have, what nationality, what gender, what nothing. None of that matters in a relationship as to how far you can go with your soul on the inside with that. And I mean, like with what abilities, what you can make conscious of, all of these kind of things. And so I invite you to feel that again now, that anchor that goes inside of you into forever. For your inner worlds are much bigger, they're infinite. They're much bigger than universe, Milky Way in a physical universe. They're infinite. And so feel, allow, give yourself permission to expand into next level for you, to make bigger part of go next level with you with you, as to what you make conscious within yourself, as to how far you allow yourself to travel on the inside. And these are again words because the direction is not, you know, like that. When we say we expand, we have the image like that. On the inside, the direction is multidimensional. So it's not, I can't say I'm expanding out or in or to the left or to the right. It's multi-layered. I know I'm expanding, but there isn't a word that I can say to describe that multidimensional expansion. And I invite each one to become much more familiar with, even with that as well, is how, what direction, if any, does this expansion go into on the inside? How does it feel? Um, how do you recognize it? Where, what parts of your body is it affecting? And then see what parts of your life get affected, like what all of a sudden, becomes what you were interested in something, and all of a sudden that becomes boring to you and you're done with it. All of a sudden, it may happen in a day. These are some of the effects of the inner changes, that you become uninterested in some things and you become very interested in other things. Um, how you do things, where you want to spend your time, who you want to talk with. Do you want to be more quiet, more social, more? So all of these are everyday effects of your inner world. And again, the basis of it all is this feeling of this connection, of this anchor, and to keep coming back to this. And it doesn't matter what you do, and it doesn't matter what you perceive of yourself as. Certain things, we do have consequences in, let's say, in physical life. Let's say this is just an example. If you offend a person, a friend, they may unfriend you. You may never become friends again. So you did something and that had real consequences. So there will be consequences regardless, in the physical world. But so it's not like, oh, it doesn't matter what I do in the world, I'm still just connected. And so it doesn't matter what I do, I can be an asshole in the world or whatever, and I'm still connected. No, it doesn't. Yes, you are still connected if you choose. Um, so it doesn't matter what you do in the world, and there are the consequences. You still, this connection, when you come back to yourself, is just as strong as real, regardless of what happens in the world. Let's say you did make a mistake and you lost a friend. It doesn't affect your connection with your soul if you choose, if you come back and allow that forgiveness and compassion and all of that to work. And then some people might say, well, then you can just do anything and you feel this compassion. But the thing is, with connecting with your soul, that your mm, level of consciousness keeps rising. So when you are at a certain level of connection with your soul, there are certain acts that you would not even consider anymore doing. And so it isn't like, you're making yourself scot-free, that you can just do anything, because the thing is, there are loads of stuff. Actually, you go the opposite way. So many things that before, when I was disconnected and I see other people accepting is fine. But as I keep becoming more and more infused with my soul, I can see so many of those things barbaric. To other people, they look normal, they perceive them as normal. To me, they are barbaric. And so there's no need to fear that you get scot-free and you can just do anything. It's not that you can't do anything, it's just that as you're more and more conscious, there's a more and more that you just find barbaric, and there's no way that you would even consider being able to even do that anymore, or for the first time. And so there is no need. Some people have this kind of fear with that. These are all of the kind of questions that one considers. But with your consciousness, with your more presence of your soul, your consciousness keeps rising too. And a conscious person, yeah, acts and behaves in a very, very different way. And so many, many things become barbaric. And at the same time, you become incredibly intolerable of certain things. And so to some people, it may appear that you act as rude, but in reality, you've become very aware of your boundaries, of how you need to maintain and nurture your own energetic space and your own self-love. And so you also say no to certain things, because in the 3D world, a lot of the good things have, as I said, have been corrupted, have been, like let's say, kindness is very often is a energy stealing and all of these kind of things. And then there is real kindness, which is a soul infused, heart-filled kindness. So you develop that discernment between these things. You cannot be manipulated anymore, because these good things of humans, like kindness and wanting to help and stuff, they've been turned in and are used by a lot of the systems, that then they do whatever they do. And so these too, when you see these kind of things, it can be quite shocking when you see them first time and you continue to see what you observe them, and then they just pass as normal. Yeah, but more and more people are awakening with all of these things. And so again, I would invite each one to continue to come back to home over and over if need be, to continue to nurture the safe space within you, and this connection, this priceless connection with your soul, with your greater being, with your presence of your divinity, and to keep choosing with accordance to that, and to keep walking step by step with what you, as your own consciousness, in your own dance, in your own, to your tune, to the song of your soul that you come up with. And each day by day, hour by hour, as we continue this most incredible journey that we're on at the moment. And so we've come to the end of this session, I feel. So, yes, Soul Vibes 30, and we keep going strong. And so, dear friends, until next time, from Alexis, Michael, and the team, until next time, thank you and namaste.